All right, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning to the ones who are with us over the internet. It's always nice to have you all here back on the Sunday, which is a little bit warmer and at least it's not snowing. It's always good to have you all here so we can once more together learn a little bit and grow a little bit spiritually on a beautiful Sunday. Today we're going to have a lecture by our friend Tiago. It's going to be about mediumship and science. So it's a very interesting topic because we usually think that science and religion or philosophy don't go together. And let's see what Tiago's going to tell us about that today. All right. But before we do that, as always, we're going to do our initial reading by our friend Daniel. And then after, we're going to have our initial prayer by Raquel before we have our lecture. Okay, thank you. Yours.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Today I'm going to read by the book Happy Life. Whenever you make a commitment, honor it with your presence. Before accepting any task, meditate about it so as not to put yourself in a disagreeable position. If something comes up which keeps you from appearing or carrying out your task, communicate this beforehand to avoid hurting the person who is waiting for you or the one who is putting his trust in you. Whether they are small or large, carry out all of the obligations that you take on.
So let's now close our eyes, elevate our thoughts to our Master Jesus, and all the beloved spirit friends that are present here today with us. Let's ask them to open our minds and our hearts for the lecture of today. Let's ask them to inspire our friend Tiago. Thank you. So be it.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I'm very glad to be here. I believe that this little message from Joana de Angelis was for me, I would say. I thought a few times during this week, out of full disclosure, to call Teresa, Marco, and say, I'm not coming. And I'll tell you why. In the middle of the week, I lost a tooth. And I was thinking, this is not going to allow me to come here and talk to everybody. But I somehow had that thought, there is a commitment that for whatever reason, I believe that it was more important than my tooth in that moment. And not having a tooth didn't take away from me the ability to sit and to read and to study and to be here. I needed to communicate to people at my work, which made me feel not the best because people counted on me as well. So I believe that this message is always in some point or another speak with us and makes me even happier to be here because I believe that this message was the answer for me. That was the right thing to do what I did. And sometimes we're happy to realize that the things go right and we need to celebrate that. And I'm celebrating with all of you being here and sharing with you what I was studying during this week, which honestly was not very easy. And I will tell you why. When I was researching, and usually I try to research, I try to watch some lectures on the internet, I try to read passages or books. The amount of material that is around the spiritist science in general is vast. And I was asking myself, what can I share with everybody in around 45 minutes that would make sense? It would make sense for me as well. Trying to explain all of those who investigate spiritist phenomena. Trying to share about all the advancements that are happening and all the professionals that are invested on that. I didn't feel that would be fruitful because, at least for me, I would lack some important foundation to understand what spiritism and mediumship and science have somehow in common. We constantly learn about science and religion being two different aspects of human knowledge that don't go hand in hand. Teresa said very well, what is that about? Science and religion and mediumship. What is all of that? How would that meet? And I was very interested to trying to find a little bit of that foundation and share with you. I, of course, encourage everybody to study and to research. The Brazilian Spiritist Federation has one specific page dedicated to articles, scientific articles about Spiritism and science. And I really encourage all of you to go there. And probably many of us will become interested in one or another aspect of Spiritism as science that is being accepted and spread around. But somehow there is a foundation. And I believe that I was looking at that foundation. And the first thing that came to mind was, in fact, a passage from the Gospel according to Spiritism. In the chapter 6, the consoling Christ, there is a message from the Spirit of Truth. And the Spirit of Truth says, "O Spiritists, love one another." That is the first teaching. Educate yourselves. That is the second. And that caught my attention. This speaks about the alliance between science and Spiritism. And within that chapter, there is one section called Alliance Between Science and Spiritism. We have different ways to make sense and to understand and make meaning of our world. We are very well used to the world that we can see, that we can touch, and that we can measure. We are very used to what we call the natural sciences, that would establish a relationship between cause and effect. There is no effect without a cause. This is one of the statements that we understand that in science, in the human science that we know, that is solid. And at the same time, already in the Spirit's book, there was something there saying absolutely the same thing. How can we understand and make sense of the phenomena that even though are part of our lives, but still we don't understand? The natural sciences are very well advanced on the understanding of what we call the natural laws of the material world. Physics, chemistry, mathematics, social science, psychology, understanding the relationships between people, understanding the nature of our emotions, the way that we talk to the world, how our bodies function, how the earth moves and evolves. However, there is one world that this specific science doesn't grasp fully, which is a world that is beyond the comprehension through simply our material senses. Certain specific tendencies, certain specific impulses that are not even explained by the sciences that we have today, how can we understand them? Which means do we have to make sense of them? Can we consider them real? Not long ago, probably 200 years ago, we would question if our emotions were even valid. For those who know about science, René Descartes would say that we are beings of reason. Today, in the modern psychology, many of the currents in psychology would say mind over mood. We are supposed to be guided by our reason. However, we understand that there is something beyond the reason. There is something beyond the thought. And when we think about that unknowns that still exist in our lives, for instance, the religious phenomena, the phenomena with the beyond. What happened before we were born? We can talk about the universe. Can we talk about ourselves as beings? Still, there is controversy. What is going to happen with us? More than ever, there is that kind of discussion. Do we survive? And that is interesting because the natural science are trying to investigate those phenomena. Still, there are gaps. But going back to Spiritism, which is the foundation that we have here, and trying to understand it through those statements that come to us. Allan Kardec, after countless encounters with phenomena that could not be explained through the means of the mainstream natural science, will start compiling information and knowledge about those phenomena that were considered anything but reality, anything but truth. There would be noises coming from objects. There would be communications coming from, doubtful means. But by compiling that, and by compiling that to what he called Spiritism, he would then consider that Spiritism will have three different important aspects. One of them is the philosophical, which is about that understanding. What came before us? What is our origin? What is our destination? What is the meaning of our existence? Why do we suffer? All those questions that all of us have. Also, obviously, we have the religious aspect. Our relationship with the divine. Our relationship with everything that transcends us. Is there a greater force that controls and rules our lives? And the third one, it is what he would call, with a lot of property, the scientific aspect. Allan Kardec himself, as an educator, as a scientist, had skill and competency to say, yes, Spiritism is a science. It is a science of investigation. It is a science of observation. And the consequences of that investigation and observation will have consequences for our lives. Spiritism, according to him, is a science that investigates the nature, origin, and destinies of spirits and the relations to the material world. Therefore, here we have two different specific aspects of human knowledge. One of them dealing with the material and corporeal world, and one of them dealing with the invisible one. Today, Allan Kardec says, all the mistakes, all the confusion, all the criticism, all the mutual exclusion that exists between those two aspects of human knowledge comes from our imperfection. Science already would say what we don't know is still to be known and will be known in some point. We need to develop some of the methods to investigate. Not long ago, the microscopic world never existed to anybody. And through the discovery of the microscope, with different shapes of lenses, somebody took a drop of water and discovered an entire different world that was completely unknown to us, and redefined completely the way that we think about health. That helped for our longevity, that helped with the development of medications, that made us understand a lot that was happening there that we didn't understand before, that helped us to, for instance, deal with a lot of the epidemics that we have today. Why not then understand that the phenomena that affect us, that are part of our world, that we still don't measure with the mainstream methods of science, could that still be true? Allan Kardec would say yes, and many of his followers. Would you, Marco, you are going forward there for me. Would you be able to help me? Thank you. Now, let's think about it. What is science? Again, it is a systematic way to investigate something and to know something and to understand patterns and laws. So then we can understand foundations and the laws that govern certain specific phenomena. If we think about spiritism as a science of the nature and relationship with the spiritual world and the material world, we can ask ourselves, what is the object of study and investigation of spiritism? And the answer is mediumship. So let's think about mediumship. What is it? Let's remember that the first interest on the mediumship in our, more like in our times, and especially in the 19th century, was when there were specific physical phenomena affecting our senses. But when this investigation became systematic, there were questions asked about those phenomena. And the answer were, there is an effect that is intelligent, being given by a cause that apparently was not intelligent. The spirits would say, and science knows, there is no effect without a cause. Allan Kardec then would say, there is more to it. There is no intelligence effect that would not have an intelligent cause. He then would say, there are intelligences governing those phenomena. And by systematic investigation, observation, compiling of information that came from all over the world in many different ways, through very specific types of communication, then Allan Kardec would say, those phenomena of communication between the material and the spiritual world, they happen through mediumship. Therefore, mediumship is that practice. It is that reality of the communication between the material and the spiritual world. More specifically, between those who are here on earth, alive, or as we say, incarnate, and those who are already departed from this life, that we would say discarnate. Mediumship is then the practice of mediating that communication. Therefore, the study and investigation of Spiritism is central on that specific phenomenon, because then it would give the basis to understand that relationship between those two planes of existence. And through mediumship, through the understanding and the analysis of those communication, an entire world became known to us. The world of the spirits, the spiritual world. An entire set of laws came to be known to us, which in the Spirit's book we know. It is called the divine laws. Not only that, when we think about science, when we think about investigation, when we think about observation, for us in Spiritism, everything has a purpose. It is not simply for curiosity, which was a lot of the reasons why people gathered around flying tables in the 1900s to watch tables flying, to watch houses making noises, to watch people going into trances and speaking different languages, and people levitating for mere curiosity. Not only that, very profitable at the time. People would charge good money to let others watch all of that. But that time has passed. In the same way that we all evolve, that science also is evolving from physical phenomena, which were purposely happening to call our attention, to reach our material senses. Allan Kardec, together with a no number of scholars, intellectuals, professionals, people involved in understanding the spiritual world, were able to compile, organize all those series of specific communications and bring to us a body of knowledge that changed completely the understanding that we have about our world, about ourselves as beings in this planet, the relationship that we have with the entire universe, the reality of the spiritual life, the existence of God, and the purpose of our existence. The Spiritist science responds to our philosophical questions and dilemmas and presents moral consequences, helps us to change. That is the purpose, and to change to be better. If we think then that there is systematic study of the various types of communication, their language, their content, who is giving those communications, where are they happening, for how long, which different span of time, helps us to understand that we can see then patterns of those communications. Those patterns will allow us to know what is the message that is being given. Is there a reason why those kinds of communications exist and are being given from many different sources? Is there something that wants to be told to us? Allan Kardec then developed what he calls the universal control. What does that mean, universal control? First of all, he himself, as a scientist, an educator, as a person of, systematic methods of investigation, he would say the constant analysis of coherence on all communications that are received. Okay, you can ask me, what about communication? So, for those who are interested, if we go to a publication from Allan Kardec before the basic works, right? The Spirit's book, the Gospel According to Spiritism, the Medium's book. There was the Spiritist magazine. Several years. When Allan Kardec was the editor and organized a lot of articles that were published. Among those articles, he would receive not only articles from people that would be investigating the spiritual phenomena, but he would receive countless numbers of communications attributed to spirits from all over the world. And he started systematically to investigate and to analyze and to understand the patterns and to see if there was something there coherent. So that is the first method that he used, the analysis of the coherence, the language of the communication, the content of those communications. And he started to understand that those communications were given by those claiming to be the ones who already lived on earth and now are gone from here, but telling us we are still alive. We have something to tell you. We have lived in a certain way while we were on earth, and that dictated the way that we were welcomed in the spiritual world. And that dictated the way that we see ourselves in that world. And telling us, we all came from here. We are all going back to that world. That is the original world. And that is our destiny. Therefore, the way that we live here will tell us the way that we will live the other life. And not only that, they would say life will continue. And they would say there are models and examples to be followed. Can we live better? Can we act differently? Relate differently with each other? Yes. The Spiritism that we know today came from that analysis, didn't come from Allan Kardec's mind. It came from something that is part of the universal control. That is the second and most important aspect of the universal control, which is called the sanction of the spirits. You may ask me, Tiago, why do you think that the Spiritism is different from other religions? That is a very, very clear difference. The sanction of the spirits, which didn't happen with other religions. Most, if not all religions that we know were created by humans like you and I. And many of the aspects of those religions have the same flaws, inconsistencies, and incoherencies that we all have. In a way or another, many of them would claim more or less truth to their side. By the sanction of the spirits, what is given to us by Spiritism is not without Spiritism, there is no way. It is without charity. Spiritism would say without charity, there is no salvation. Spiritism doesn't say without Christianity, there is no salvation. Without Islamism, there is no salvation. Christians, Islamists, Buddhists, we all strive to live within that law of love, of charity, of justice, that will make the humanity better. And through the sanction of the spirits, Allan Kardec will allow us to understand that there is a truth that is beyond us. It is not by the communication of one spirit, it is not by the knowledge of one person that we can determine that is something is truth for us. We don't decide. We can sit down in those meetings, just like the image that I put for us there. Everybody with their hands holding, everybody can pray the most beautiful prayers. Everybody can evoke the most sublime spirits, but it only happens when they decide that it will happen. Because the sanction of the spirits has one important aspect. Those communications were spontaneous. It is not a science of evoking, it is a science of observing, of participating of phenomena that happen many times without our control, without our knowledge, and beyond our comprehension. When people like you and I would, for one reason or another, speak a different language, bring a different knowledge, share different information that we didn't think about before. All of us, in specific critical times in our lives, probably received thoughts or thought about things that we would never think, and thought about saying something to somebody that we never thought of saying, or guiding ourselves to go to places and to have specific responses that we normally don't do. Through all of those observations, plus all specific communications, we get the understanding and the knowledge that there is a world around us, more guiding us, more allowing us to change our ways. Because when it's time for something to exist, it will. When it's time for us to receive important information and knowledge, we will. Of course, that is another question. Of course, Tiago, you're talking about the sanctions of the Spirit. So then you're saying that everything is coming from them. No, that is our part. And our part continues being the analysis, the understanding, and the study, and the search for coherence and patterns of everything. Allan Kardec would say it is better to reject 1,000 truths than allow one lie to pass. Because with the sanction of the spirits, those 1,000 truths will become 1,001 truth, until the analysis will show that this truth wants to be told, and we finally listen. But in doubt, reject. That's what Allan Kardec would say. Because if the spirits decide that this specific knowledge needs to be given in different ways, in a different time, in the same way that the message from Jesus himself could not be told to us directly, many of Jesus' teachings came veiled. Many of them disguised in parables, in metaphors, in storytelling. And Spiritism would say, now it is time for this to be known. What is the purpose of those communications? Prove the existence of the spiritual world, the existence and the infinite love of God, and the teachings that were given to us thousands of years ago, that were distorted throughout the centuries, and now, according to the sanction of the spirits and the analysis of coherence of the messengers that came after, to restore the essence of the Christian message to all of us. And what is that message? We all know that message. Love one another. Forgive those, even those who are attacking you. Walk the extra mile. Don't return evil with evil. Now it all makes much more sense. Because through the laws that were given to us, we will understand the origin of our world and the destiny, the law of preservation, the law of destruction. When we understand the reasons why we suffer, why we are connected to the people that we are connected in this life, the law of love, the law of charity. How should we act towards each other? Live together. The law of society, the law of justice. All of those teachings were given by that systematic investigation of the communication that came through the mediumship with the sanction of the spirits and our analysis of coherence. Everything else is derived from that. So I came back one slide because, let me go back one slide there, please.
One more.
One more, please. Yeah. Maybe there is a reason why the order was this way. When we study Spiritism, it is important to understand that without the Christian message, Spiritism has no strength. And we are hearing those messages for centuries and centuries and centuries. We may ask ourselves, what about mediumship? Did mediumship start existing in the 19th century when tables started rolling around? No. Mediumship as that communication between the living and the ones from beyond exists since humans exist, in fact. More we evolve, more subtle is that relationship. More we evolve, more ability to control the world and ourselves. Therefore, less impactful, less ostensive is that relationship. The Apostle John, yes, John from the Bible. John that was there with Jesus. John that saw Jesus being crucified, was exiled to the island of Patmos. He already knew that. When he told us through that letter that he wrote, do not believe every spirit. Don't we have some similarity with what Allan Kardec said? Analysis. Do not believe every spirit. It is not because it comes from the spiritual world that we're going to be naive, that everything that comes from them is good. Remember, it is us there. We can take the conclusion for ourselves. Test the spirits to see whether they are from God. Test the spirits to see if they are from God. They systematically had communication with the spirits. They systematically gave communication from the spirits. One of the greatest examples of that specific communication is in the day of the Pentecost that is described in the book of Acts. That the disciples were, according to the Bible, they were taken by the Holy Spirit. That's the way that the Bible say, right? Basically, they were all in a mediumistic trance and started speaking in different languages to all the people in that area, that region that were there, because it was a region of a lot of commercial activity with people from many different places. So they were able to speak in different languages in order to make that message, let's call, according to the scope of the access that they have, universal, accessible to all of those who were there to listen. Aren't we talking about that universal control? That different communications will come from different parts of the world in many different languages through different methods and kinds, and then be analyzed on their coherence, on their language, on their content. And when we think about the content, we're talking exactly about that content of conduct, of acting towards the other, the quality of our relationships. That's what we call the morals. The other way to say that, it is like, were those communications ethical? Did they follow principles? Were they talking about what we call virtues? Yes. Of the qualities of the Spirit. Let me see if I can change. I cannot. Can you press, please? And finally, bringing to you one specific example. Again, we are talking here about the foundations. I would never feel comfortable bringing knowledge that I myself wouldn't be knowledgeable to pass. Probably other investigators, scientists will be able to pass that information with more ability, more expertise than me. But if we are to understand some of the very important moral consequences of that science on mediumship, we will go to a specific book called Heaven and Hell. What does that book say about? Who read the book? Good. You know what to do then. I will give a little bit, okay? Not a lot. It is a great, great, great book. And there is a very important reason why this is a great book. Beyond our knowledge, pure and simply intellectual, to understand the different kinds of communication from different classifications of spirits that will tell us their condition after life based on the lives that they lived here on earth. It is a book of testimony. It is a book that is incredibly relatable to us. Spirits just like you and I come back and tell us how they lived, how they presented themselves, how the world saw them, what position they occupied here on earth, but also their intimate state of being. How did they think? What did they think about others? What did they think about themselves? Did they think more or less? Were they devoted to helping others or only themselves? Were they so occupied with accumulating earthly possessions, or they were occupying to understand and meet the needs of others? So on and so forth. And then they tell us because of that way that we have lived on earth, we see ourselves happy, unhappy, in pain, in need, in the spiritual world. It is a testimony and it is an invitation through all that we call that science, that investigation, that observation, that listening, analyzing, and then an invitation to understand about us, who we are, beyond what others will see, beyond the positions that we occupy in our lives here, beyond the titles that we have, beyond the socioeconomic status that we have, or if we are of a socioeconomic status, one or another, what are we doing with that place that we are occupying temporarily? And the invitation to look to ourselves and understanding where we are at as immortal beings. In this moment, very crucial, essential, important moment in our lives as spirits, occupying a body, occupying a place on a family, occupying a role on a company, searching for something with needs, with means, with possessions, with pains, with virtues. What to do with them in order to continue that path and see ourselves rejoicing after we look back and understand what we have done with those concessions that were given to us. Marco, last one, please. As a common practice that I have, I always look for the source. And for me, the source is always Jesus. And the ramifications of what Jesus told us, and the paths that we could take after 3 years of Jesus' encounter with us here, for more than 2,000 years. Everything that is unfolding from Jesus' teachings and lessons to us. If I were to find the source of what I'm doing here today and everything that I'm talking about, it came from that phrase. When Jesus asks us for the truth, he's not talking about our personal truth. He's talking about the immortal truths, the truth that comes from the Spirit, that truth that comes from God. When Jesus talks about the truth, he's talking about the sanction of the spirits. Jesus himself said, I cannot tell you everything, but when the Spirit of truth comes, he will explain everything that I could not. He will then reveal everything that I could not reveal. He is the consoler. Because the meaning is for our consolation, for our healing, and for our growth. And that truth will set you free. The freedom from what? The freedom from the extreme dependency of the materiality. Be free from the thought that everything ends with this life. Free from all the chains that don't allow us to finally find ourselves and grow as immortal spirits. But not only free from, set you free. Free to what? Free to live those laws that we already know that come with us. Freedom to love without the need to be rewarded. Free to forgive and to liberate ourselves from rage, from resentment, from everything that is obstacle to our evolution. Free to be open to the help from the spiritual world without fear, without shame, without being shy to consider yourselves more, to believe what others will laugh about, to be free because that freedom is here. It is a freedom that doesn't need to be broadcasted. It is the freedom to be the spirit that we were made to be today and beyond. And you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. So I believe that this can help us to at least give one step forward to one day finally find the truth. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tiago. It's a very good job. You can see it. Yeah.
He's hiding it.
It's hiding, yeah.
It's my
Any-
safe place, right here.
Yeah, you time out, go to the
Yeah.
corner.
That's right.
Any comments, any questions? Anything on the internet? No? Okay. Yeah, this is very good. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
No, you can go ahead.
Oh, no.
No, it's just when looking at the slides, I was thinking that's why sometimes people say it's very hard to be a spiritist because it takes a lot of study and analysis of coherence, which is part of the scientific method. And I was just reflecting that nowadays, I mean, on the past 3 years when science was so much denied, and I think now we have kind of the responsibility of being more analytical on what we receive and get to study more about spiritism and how, what the classical science, what it brings to us and how we can apply it to our lives. And the other thing is, we've been observing in the past couple of years some people that call themselves mediums and bringing messages that are weird sometimes, and it brings that importance of analyze the coherence. There's one example on the internet, which name I will not say, but claims to receive direct message from a certain spirit and broadcast it on lives on YouTube. And when you see the content, I watched it once, 1 hour live in 20 minutes, you could see clear contradictions with what Kardec said. Actually, in less than 20 minutes, I just took up to 20 minutes and then I said, okay, that's it. But that's why it's so important to study, analyze, don't take everything on the first, on the first attempt. And as Kardec himself puts in his books, he didn't take everything on the first glance. He actually waited for confirmation, and whenever another big revelation comes, it will not come through one source. It will probably come through a different one, because that is the sanction of the spirits. That confirms that information is true. It's like science. When you do an experiment, that experience is repeated by another group and it goes to the same conclusion, then it gives you strength to that fight. It's kind of
Yeah, that's true. And I think that's what brought to us, Tiago, is that importance of this rational faith. Because that's what the scientific mind, when Kardec brings the scientific mind to religion, to philosophy, this is like what he brought the rational thinking, right? Is there's no more like magic or what's happening, right? It's be rational. Does it make sense or does not make sense? Does this make sense with the teachings that Jesus brought to us or does not make sense? He brought this rational faith. And Kardec says in the books, if science ever prove any part of the book to be wrong, he says it stays with science and forget what's that part of it. Say don't take away the whole book, but that piece of the book, if science proves that's wrong, go with science. It makes very clear, and forget that part in the book, right? So it has to be. But so far, he's impaired with science, right? And it's funny because this morning, just all came. We had a training here for group of passes, and we're talking about science because that's passes. It is magnetism, and through science now we can actually now understand how's the effects of passes, why they work, because science. If we didn't have science until this day, would believe that some kind of a magic that when we do these passes, there's some effect on people and they feel better, but it's magic, right? Now with science, we say, oh no, it's natural. It's just part of the physics, right? There's magnetism that works and everything's explained like, oh, okay. So it's just part of natural laws of, right? And mediumship, same thing. Through science now, we know how the communication happens, right? And it's just natural, just part of a natural, these are the laws of nature, actually, right? And nothing more than that. So being rational, right? Doing the analysis. That's why I say the second thing, right? Educate yourself, like you brought to us, right? Because otherwise you're gonna believe in anything. Right? All right. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Thiago, again. Thank you for everyone who was with us over the internet. Hoping to see you back next week, our next lecture. All right, so we are going to be preparing ourselves now for the passes. I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but do we have anybody who's